Welcome to another episode of Viatorian Voices Conversations on the Way. As young adults head to college, some big questions arise and get asked many times. What do you want to major in? And then what do you want to do for a career? In college, you may try a few different majors and types of classes, and eventually you work your way to a degree and toward next steps a volunteer program, graduate school, job applications, different jobs and roles within a career, and more. Over the course of a few episodes, we wanted to talk to different Viatorian young adults who are a bit further down this road and invite them to offer some insights and reflections about how they worked through it. We hope their insights and discernment experience have benefited those working through discernments of their own. These episodes are an extension of our Viatorian Young Adult Accompaniment, a network of Viatorian connected young adults in college and postgrad life who stay plugged into Viatorian life through our private Instagram, through regular check in texts and DMs, through some online avenues, including a faith sharing group and GroupMe, and the friendships they sustain among themselves. To join in, request to follow Viatorian YA on the Way on Instagram or visit bit.ly/YA on the Way, all lowercase, to share a life update with us and get looped in. Having spoken with young adults in several different types of careers, in this episode we'll conclude the series by talking to a few young adults who are in college right now. Moving a little earlier in the timeline, we wanted to talk with some people whose decision-making processes and choices are quite fresh as they move through their undergraduate studies. Here's our guests in their own words.
Hi, I'm Amy Ochoa. I go to the University of Iowa. I am a sophomore and I'll be graduating in May 2026. I am a marketing major with a Spanish minor and a international business certificate. And after college, my goal is to go into marketing for a company. Hopefully, I can work in a diverse team that could bring me traveling opportunities.
Hello, my name is Laiton. I come from Colegio San Viator in Bogota, Colombia originally. I was part of VYC 2019, and that's sort of how my connection with the veterans here in the US started. Currently, I'm doing civil engineering at Illinois Institute of Technology. This is my first time at IIT. I previously did 2 years of college at Olivet Nazarene University, which used to be St. Viator College years ago. My expected graduation year, it's May 2025. It might look like May 2026, so we'll see.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kyle Wallisch. I am from St. Viator High School in Arlington Heights. I am an alum of the class of 2022. I've been a part of the Viatorian since my freshman year of high school when I met with Father Corey Brost to talk about a confirmation speech I was going to make. And I've been happy to know this wonderful religious group ever since. Currently, I am studying at St. Norbert College, located in De Pere, Wisconsin, which is right outside of Green Bay. And I am a sophomore studying elementary education, and I will be graduating also in the spring of 2026. And my plans after school is to be a middle school math teacher.
And I'm Pre-Associate Dan Masterton. It was my pleasure to host this conversation for us earlier this spring. I started by asking each of them how they narrowed down their college choice and made it to the college they attend now. You'll hear first from Amy, then Herman, and finally Kyle. Enjoy the conversation.
I actually applied to a good amount of schools. I did base off my schools depending on like their business program and their business school. So that really helped me narrow down my schools, along with the fact that I kind of wanted to leave the city. So I come from Chicago and I just wanted a different experience. I grew up there my whole life. And I knew that college was going to give me an opportunity to become more independent. So based off that, although I did apply to schools in the city, I just narrowed it down to schools further from the city, somewhere in state, but I prioritized Wisconsin, Indiana. I applied to Iowa. I applied to some in Florida as well. And then I feel like something that really helped me choose my school was how much they reached out to me. Not every school was reaching out as much and trying to get to know me. So due to that, I was like, okay, maybe the school isn't the best fit for me. I looked at like their clubs and what they had to offer. And I don't know, I kind of just chose Iowa. It's not that far away from home. So in case of anything, I was always able to go home. They have a great business school and really good clubs that I am involved in. And yeah, they were able to offer me a good scholarship as well. So that really helped me.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a factor. How about you, Herman? You're in an interesting situation since you started at one school and then transferred on to a second. Can you talk about how you first got to ONU and then what went into the decision to move on to Illinois Tech?
Yeah, there's actually, it's kind of funny because I not only transferred from Olivet to IIT, but I also transferred from a previous school in Colombia to ONU. In my case, I don't know, I feel like the whole college experience is very different in Colombia than it is here in the US. It's oriented differently, completely, at least from my perspective and from my experience. I originally started majoring in cadastral engineering, which is like a study of the land type of thing. But I've always wanted to work in sustainable buildings and sustainable materials and stuff like that. So I was very interested in architectural engineering because there's a big focus on sustainability and how to reduce the environmental footprint for buildings and stuff like that. And that is not very well known in Colombia. Like there are no universities that offer it, but at Olivet they did. And I felt like a lot of things lined up. I had a couple of friends that were going there that I met through VYC. Long story. uh, and having the connection of the Viatorians, I called it like God was calling me to be there. Maternity BVM was right next to the school, so I feel like a lot of things just lined up. I also get a scholarship for being part of the cross country and track team, which was a significant help and a significant factor on why I chose all of that. They are an Assyrian school, so different than Catholic. A couple of times, I would say I was probably looked a little bit different than some of the other kids, like, oh, he's a Catholic kid, you know. But that happened to a lot of kids, and I got to learn that by going to church and realizing, like, oh, you're Catholic too. A very close friend of mine from classes that I was doing architectural engineering too. I had no idea that she was Catholic, and that's how we connected and started to like build up a community right next to the school, but not directly through the school. It was great. And in there I got involved in the civil engineering club, which opened my eyes to other opportunities, to other possibilities. And they opened a scholarship that was the first time that they opened it for international students. I'm under an F1 visa, so like I don't get to apply for FAFSA or anything like that. So
Right.
scholarships are definitely a big factor on my decisions. And they opened this scholarship here at Illinois Tech. I thought it would be a good move career-wise, since my goal is to stay here in the US after graduation. So it was definitely very hard. It was a very hard decision to make because I did make a really good friends in there through the track team, through the same civil engineering club. I learned to see religion from a different perspective. I was involved in Bible studies and things like that. And even when it was not Catholic, even when like we wouldn't start prayer and end prayer the same way, I feel like there was a lot of intentionality and lots of different perspectives that really stood out with me. Now here at IIT, it's definitely different.
So IIT had a unique scholarship that drew you there. What
Yeah.
else was appealing about like moving on to there for maybe your program of study or your hopes for post-grad careers? Was there something special that IIT offered that was particularly helpful to your situation or to the kind of job that you knew could help you stay in the States?
Yes, definitely. Like their programs here are very well known. Unfortunately, a lot of companies that are in little towns and stuff like that, they are not willing to sponsor a visa. They are not even willing to hire an international student. I remember I was very excited about a company and I went through the whole hiring process until they're like, yeah, sorry, we don't do internationals. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But being so close to the city and there are so many international students here and it's just different. Here, people are willing to open that door. Here, they're willing to open that opportunity to move forward with you. I got initially an internship in Romeoville, which really helped me to build skills and build connections for me to get a second internship here in Chicago. And at that company, I feel like it was easier for them to advocate for me migration wise if I would go to a school that they were a little bit familiar with. And obviously, like Illinois Tech is something that they're more familiar with in that aspect. So yeah, that was definitely a big factor. And also they have an amazing engineering program. It's great. I'm part of a research program that I'm really excited about. Like the whole point of me choosing architectural engineering originally was for me to learn about sustainable materials. And I'm working in sustainable concrete research with a professor. And by the way, I'm doing civil engineering now, but definitely very in touch with my architectural engineers and trying to learn more from them every day. But I think the research opportunities and career opportunities was definitely a big factor of my last college decision.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, and then Kyle, how did you find yourself at St. Norbert College?
So after third grade, I left a public school to go into a Catholic school in Mount Prospect called St. Emily's. And my family and I never kind of looked back at a Catholic education. And we continued that when we went to St. Viator High School. And then we were looking at the college decisions, and it was, well, we can go to a large co public college where, no offense to Amy here, you could easily get lost. For me personally, and you know what, I'm not saying Amy doesn't have this opportunity, but for me, I really appreciate meaningful relationships with my professors. And I know that might be more of a challenge when you're in a classroom setting of 300 students. And so for me, being at a small Catholic college is super important for me. One, just for my education, but two, to continue to improve and fulfill my faith life. And I was debating between St. Norbert and Loras College in Dubuque, Iowa. And I didn't really know which one I needed to do. And I actually, my first ever tour was here at St. Norbert. And then I went to Loras later in the fall, and I was hung up. I didn't know which one I wanted because Loras just like hit a ball out of the park for like what they do for your what you can do religiously. And I came back here to actually do a second tour at SNC, and I was like, okay, we're going here. We're gonna come to St. Norbert. And I never looked back. And what I've really appreciated about continuing to improve my faith life is, for a great example, is just last week I was on spring break. I actually was down in Memphis, Tennessee, volunteering in a children's hospital and learning about social justice issues regarding children's health care. And on the trip itself, we weren't really learning about those injustices, but leading up to the trip, we were focused on that and learning about, why are kids in these situations, right? And so they really highlighted the difference between equity and equality. And now in my classes are doing the same thing, especially in like a classroom management type course. But for me, really, the big important thing was to continue to live a life with faith at a Catholic college. I know you can do that at a public school, but for me, just to be more surrounded by other believers in my faith was super important for me.
Nice. So what if we look now at, the majors that you guys chose and the course of study that was laid out in front of you when you made that choice? Man, if we start with you, you kind of talked about what drew you to engineering, your interest in sustainable materials. Can you talk a little bit about like what within yourself you feel your gifts and talents are, and then how much you feel drawn to engineering because maybe you can make like a good salary and have a good career versus how much it's like kind of a personal interests and fulfillment kind of thing at your core, how you kind of balance that out in your choice and how that plan of study's gone for you?
I think it's a little bit challenging sometimes. Like there are days and there are classes that I'm like, I hate this. Like I cannot do this. It's just too challenging, and I'm like, yeah. But then when I look into the bigger picture, into the impact that I could do into the communities, helping to reduce environmental footprint through materials, through buildings, ensuring that next generations have access to the things that we have access to today and take for granted a lot of the times, I feel like it makes it all worth it at the end. And that's not something that I originally thought about, but the more that I get into the career, the more that I get to interact with people in the field and stuff like that, I feel like the more I fall in love with the career, I would say. I think there's a lot of room for improvement in a lot of areas, and I want to be part of that. However, that looks like, however God wants me to be part of. So yeah, definitely a lot of the times I don't think I'm able to. There are times in which I feel stupid. I'm like, I have to go to touring more than the regular student does. I have to be asking questions all the time. I'm definitely that annoying kid in the back, being like, "Hey, can you like repeat that again? Could we go over that problem again? Sorry, that didn't click for me. Could we like, please?" But I think at the end of the day, it's worth it to advocate for your education. My advice for people that face challenging in any type of major or in any type of field, it's to look at the bigger picture and look at the reason behind it before you give up, before you think I'm not good enough for this. Because you are. I feel like God has given us amazing skills and has given us a power of resilience for us to be able to go through challenge and
Yeah, I appreciate you touching on self-advocacy and being willing to take the time to ask those follow-up questions. I think once you've identified an area of study that you are this interested in, I think it becomes a little bit easier to put in that extra effort and let yourself have those chances. And I'm glad that you're doing it for yourself and for those you'll serve in your career for sure. Kyle, what drew you to studying education? What was your within your gifts and talents was drawn to that, and how do you see it as a career that, even if maybe it's not the most lucrative thing you can do in society, it certainly could be one of the more fulfilling things you might do.
Yeah. So fulfillment is, I think, a really good word to describe why you want to do something so impactful. When I was in high school, a man named Jason Wilhite, I got to do a lot of different retreats, different social justice events where, I kind of figured out that I wanted to help a group of people and for the rest of my life. I didn't want to sit on my butt at a desk and type in numbers on like a spreadsheet. That for me personally, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to be an accountant. I don't want to do your taxes. That's not me. I really want to get out in the world. I believe I'm an extrovert. I love to talk to people. And so what better way of doing that than being a teacher? However, when I was going into college, I was that business major. I was going to put data into a spreadsheet
Oh
for the rest
man.
of my life. But the summer going into college, I was at a graduation party for one of my friends, and both of her parents and older sister all went to St. Norbert College. They're all teachers. And I sat at a kitchen table with them for hours, just talking about education, St. Norbert, their experience with teaching. And like the more I thought about it, I was like, being a teacher, that has like that Mr. Kyle, like that's got a cool ring to it? And so um I was like 2 weeks into my freshman year and I went to my advisor and I was like, I'll be seeing you later. I'm no business major anymore. I'm gonna go be an education major. And my first year, what I really appreciate about the college, I'm not going to try to go too tour guide and missions on you here, but St. Norbert provides the opportunity to be in a classroom environment all 4 years. In larger universities and in really just most colleges, you're only going to be in a classroom your senior year during student teaching. What S&C provides is for you to have the ability to realize, hey, maybe teaching's not for me during your first year or your second year. So you don't get to your student teaching and you realize the last 3.5 years of your life and studying have become meaningless because unfortunately that is a sad reality for some people. So my first year here, I did a after school program in the Green Bay Public School District through the YMCA. And I worked in a school that was very low income. Major populations were Hispanic, Latinx, and African American. And over 80% of the school was identified as economically disadvantaged. And it was eye-opening because being at St. Viator High School and St. Emily's, I pay for school, right? And, there might be more successful individuals and families who go to those schools. But being in this public school, it was a total 180, right? It gets you out of your bubble and what you're familiar with. And there was a time where there was a young girl who was on the waiting list to be a part of this after school program due to staff shortages. They couldn't invite her in, and they had a smaller group than usual, which also just goes in the fact of like teachers, there's not enough of them right now. But she unfortunately was shot and killed. And it was in that moment where I was like, you know, what I want to do is there's going to be those hard days, but you have to be the light at the tunnel for these students now going forward. And I guess thinking about it now, I can relate it to my faith where, in those darkest times or like footprints in the sand, there's only one set of footprints. Why, Jesus, where'd you go? And, Jesus says, well, I was carrying you. And in a moment like that, I kind of realized I was carrying some of those students because being at the young age they were at, I have the questions of where's my friend at? And it's like, how do you respond to that? How do you answer that to a young child? And so I feel like that was a really large turning point in my life to realize this is something I want to do. This is something that's super challenging and difficult, but it's so rewarding and beneficial because you can teach kids what's right in the world. You don't they don't have to go down a dark path. So, now this year I actually just got placed this week to be observing a fifth grade classroom for the month of April. So I'm super excited about that. But I wouldn't change anything that has happened in my college career. And for just to kind of add on to Herman here, for anyone who's listening, if you're a high school student or you're a young college student and you're doubting your major or you're doubting what your future is going to be, that is totally okay. Dan, I know you doubted your major. Amy and Herman, I know we've all doubted our majors as well. It ain't all rainbows and sunshines. There's gonna be that assignment that's a pain in the butt. There's gonna be the days where you're like, I just don't find the point in this. That's normal. It's totally okay. But at
Yes.
the end of the day, what Herman said of looking at the bigger picture is completely right.
Yeah, well
Thank
said.
you.
It's one of the things we've noticed from young adult after young adult is even if your path isn't a straight line, if you're present and you're giving of yourself and you're attentive, whatever you're learning in that moment will have some positive impact on whatever comes next, even if you're not exactly sure what it is or what that is changes. Anything that you're present to and invested in can have a positive impact on you moving forward. So you just keep putting your best foot forward and giving your best effort, and good things tend to happen if you continue down that faithful path. So I think you're right. Amy, how did you put your puzzle together with business and the international piece and the language piece? How did that all come together for you?
Opposite from Kyle. Um, so growing up, I actually thought I was gonna take the route that Kyle took. So I was always a huge math person, and I was always like helping other kids, like tutoring them. So I always thought I was gonna take the teacher route. And for a really long time, that's really what I thought I was gonna do. And high school really opened my eyes, especially my junior and senior year, and that's kind of where I made like a decision to go the business route, which I know it's very early in my career to just like automatically say, oh, I'm gonna take the business route. But yeah, but my uncle played a huge role in it. He's an economics major. So he would just hand me all of his books. And I would look at him like, you're crazy right now. Like, I'm not going to read through all of that. Like, obviously, I took an economics class in high school. So I had an understanding of what economics was, but I was like, I'm not reading that. Like, I'm still a high school student. I'll make up my mind later on. When I applied to college, I came in as a direct admit for the business school. And I really like wasn't sure what my major was going to be, even though I was in the business school. My main reason for applying here was that I was a huge math person, but I didn't want to take the teacher route anymore because I just didn't want to work with people every day. I just thought that wasn't for me. And corporate life was what really got my attention. So I know some people don't like that, but I do. And I got to meet my advisor, and she's great. She's helped me so much. So I think that's something that I really like that about Iowa. I have an advisor, a business advisor from day one, who I meet with constantly, and she's really been there to help me and choose my major. It was hard choosing a major in the business school because I was like, okay, there's economics, which I have a good understanding of what it is, but there's accounting, and then there's finance and all these other things. And I really just narrowed it down to what I really wanted to do. Like, I did not want to be an accountant. I was like, okay, accounting isn't for me. And I got to know a little bit more about marketing, which it's very interesting. It can go in two very different paths. Like, you can take more of a social media marketing, what has to do more with like the journalism school for us here in Iowa. But then there's business marketing, which has to do with numbers. And at the same time, like a bit of advertising and all of that. And that really caught my attention. I was able to be marketing chair for my sorority this past fall, which Kyle know I struggled with a bit, but it gave me a different perspective that life isn't easy and we really just have to push through it. because it's not going to be like a happy day every day in school. Like we're going to struggle and it's the reality of it. But it's also like very important to remember that even though you choose like your major, you won't exactly be doing like once you graduate, you won't exactly be doing what we're doing in class. Like in class, it's just learning what the concept of it, learning what it is. But once like you're in your work life, it's very different. And I currently work for the finance team in the Veterans Affairs. And I think that has really helped me a lot. Although I'm not on the finance side for my major, it just helps me get a better understanding on what business is and how it all correlates together. So I was just really able to get an amazing opportunity, and I'm really glad.
Yeah, sounds good. It's neat to know that whether you're at a small school or a large school, there's a way for you to get the personal touch and the good advice and the positive mentorship that you need. You just have to find your way to it, and it'll be there if you
Yeah,
pursue it well enough.
I think it's
Um,
hard for sure, but you just have to put yourself out there, especially in a bigger college. Like Kyle had mentioned, our classes are pretty huge, especially lectures. Like I have a lecture that has 600 students, but it all comes down to our discussions, and that's like 20 to 30 students. So that's very helpful because that's when you get like you have to get to know your TA and not be afraid to ask for help.
yeah, that's a good point. Take advantage of that smaller kind of supplemental part to get that touch. So, kind of go around one more time. As you look back, you guys have made these really thoughtful, really intentional choices. We're trying to put yourself in a position to use your gifts and talents and hopefully meet a need that you've seen in the world. How did you get there? Like, what was the process like in terms of your prayer life, in terms of your faith life, in terms of the relationships that you've developed with people who share your values and your beliefs? How did all of those parts, maybe even some like particularly Viatorian parts, play into the process and help you get where you are and continue toward where you're going? Maybe Kyle, you want to take a crack at that one first?
I think a lot of it just has to do with your experiences. For myself, in high school, like I said, yes, I was hanging with Mr. or Jason Wilhite often enough to be able to call him now Jason. And looking back at that, it's kind of just helped build that starting ground to work on a better world here at college. It can be a challenge to keep up with your faith life. This past summer, gave a speech about the challenges of your spirituality in college, just with so many things going on in your life. And you have to think about your values. And it was nice that I was able to recognize and learn some of those while I was in high school. How am I now continuing to reaffirm those values now here in college? And then what values am I now learning that are brand new in college as well? So just experiences, I believe, are the most important thing to have really put me in the spot I am in today.
What would you say are like two or three of the most like impactful ones looking back that you can tell still like fuel you forward even now?
I love experiences where you are put into another pair of shoes and you see a new perspective of life. So the first one that jumps out to me is Father Corey's immigration trip I took 2 summers ago going into my first year of college, where we went down to Nogales, Arizona. That was crazy. Completely crazy. Simply crazy. I don't know how else to describe it. Super impactful. And like I said, putting yourself into someone else's shoes, I think is important. I'm a hands-on service guy. I've talked to brother Peter about that type of service. Another experience that really has helped formulate my values now. I like service and song. That's another thing by Corey. That was more of high school, and it's more, friendly and like hanging out with a lot of people too. But there were days where we did do some impactful service. I remember doing a Bernie's book bank,
Mm-hmm.
looking back at it now as a future educator, how important it is for students to have the ability to have the resource to read, because not even all kids have that ability, is super, super important. So that's another really important and impactful experience in my life.
Nice. What about you, Amy? What do you look back on as like some of the really important, impactful experiences from your faith life? And then what do you still experience now, or who do you still talk to now that kind of helps you keep it going and move forward in the right direction?
Yeah. So, I grew up going to St. Vitus, Chicago. Um, I got baptized there, communion, confirmation, everything. And then my confirmation year, I joined the youth group. in which I got to meet a bunch of like amazing people. But I was like the youngest crowd in the youth group, so we had a bunch of older people in there. Some were just like 2 years older, but they were older, and that's kind of when I really got to. Obviously, I always knew I wanted to go to college, but just being really close to people who were in college during that time really brought a different perspective to it because although they were in college, they would always come back to the youth group and they would try their best to be involved and just never really forget about it. So I think that really like opened up my eyes a bit because I knew like, oh, I want to do that. I want to make sure I'm always involved because faith has always just been there for me and has helped me get through a lot. I've gone through some really difficult times in my life and along with my family. And it's really hard sometimes to open up to other people about what's going on. Me personally, I don't like doing that. I kind of just keep it into myself. But I know like going to mass really helps a lot, because it's just a time where you get to think about everything going on and honestly just be grateful that you're good.
Mm.
And although you have a bunch of obstacles going on, like you'll push through it. Now that I'm in college, it's been hard keeping up with my faith. I really try. Being in a public university isn't easy when it comes to that because it's just so many students. You don't know where everyone's at with their faith, like a bunch of students aren't. And you really just have to try your best to find a group of students who go to mass or are involved and just have the same beliefs as you do. And honestly, it's hard going to mass, especially when you don't have like what I could call my family here and like my friends who I grew up going to church with. But something that really helps me is just being in touch with those back home and just knowing that like I'm not alone. And I know this past summer at VYC, that's something that we really all talked about since we were all college students, the y'alls. We all really got to relate in that aspect.
Nice. That's really honest. I appreciate that. What about you, Herman? How have you seen your faith life impact this process for you in terms of all the decisions you made the last few years and the path you hope to continue down in the years to come?
I think there's definitely a lot of support system and help from many people, including the Viatorians. Being able to live right next to Brother John was definitely a great opportunity for that. We got in touch a lot of times. We would go on walks and run sometimes. That's something that I wanted to thank Brother John in BYC 2019. One of the mornings, like the night before, they were like, "Oh, let's go for a run around the building and whatever." In Cabrini, and I was like, "These Americans." Uh, so I was like, "I'll try it," and I liked it, and I enjoyed it. And one of my closest friends in Colombia, he was a runner, and he liked it, and I was like, "I don't know what you're doing, like, why?" But enjoying that run with Brother John, and I remember Matteo Portelli was there. There were a lot of people joining us that day, and that really like started the running thing for me, for example. And running has been a great coping skill for myself, honestly. It became like a way for me to run out of my problems. Run away from my problems. Sorry. English sometimes is funny. But um that was definitely a lot of I definitely received a lot of help. Now here at IIT it has been a little bit more challenging. I'm not gonna lie. I've come to a lot of conclusions lately, one of the biggest ones. And if young adults are listening to this podcast, I would encourage you guys to not become chameleons. That was a big mistake of mine at Olivet. Obviously, like I'm in this college full of American kids that they experience their religion differently than I do. And sometimes I just wanted to fit in. Sometimes I wanted to experience a church the way they did. I don't know. And something inside of me didn't feel right, but I wanted to belong. I really wanted to be part of that for some reason. And it wasn't until like I opened up the possibility of maybe I can find the same at maternity. Maybe that'll look differently in another church. Maybe, I don't know. But then it happened again a little bit here at IIT because now I'm coming from the Christian school to the completely non-Christian school. I remember one day to some friends that I was making here, and I told them like, yeah, I'm connecting online with some people from my church, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're one of those kids. So like at the moment I was like, right. But then I was like, is this something that I need to hide?
Hmm.
Is this something that I should not bring up with these people? But I realized like it's part of my beliefs and I'm gonna advocate for it. Like I it's part of what I like, it's part of what gives me peace. I'll respect their decisions as they respect mine. And yeah, I would say like advocate for your beliefs, advocate for what you are, and also like realize that you're in a process of a lot of learning. Like college, it's a lot of learning in a lot of areas of your life, and realizing that we are not a final product, not even after we graduate. It's a great learning curve for a lot of processes, for a lot of things. Like I originally started with cadastral engineering, switched to architectural, switched to civil and architectural, switched to civil, and it was that happens, you know. But definitely like trying to build up a good support system for yourself would always be helpful. People to pray with. I wish everybody had the opportunity of the first Monday of the month do a taste prayer as we did at maternity. But little things like that that really reconnect you at times are definitely helpful.
Yeah, I appreciate the honest answers, that it's not always a smooth, easy road, but that since it's important to you guys, you find your ways to try to do it the best you can. And that hopefully the Viatorian brothers and priests and associates, or the other young people who you've been delegates or leaders with, can be part of the process of keeping you going and keeping you planted in the things that are important to you. So I appreciate the honesty, and hopefully people can find resonance there. That's all for this episode. We thank Amy, Herman, and Kyle for their insights and pray for their continued success and fulfillment along their paths. Viatorian Voices Conversations on the Way is a production of Viatorian Vocation Ministry. The Viatorians are professed brothers and priests, together with women and men lay associates, who proclaim Jesus Christ in his gospel and raise communities where faith is lived, deepened, and celebrated. In the footsteps of Venerable Louis Querbes and under the patronage of St. Viator, we strive to do everything well, so that through us, Jesus may be adored and loved. To learn more about our community, visit Viatorians.com or follow us on social media at Viatorian USA. Those seeking support and accompaniment in exploring God's invitation for them are invited to reach out to Vocation Ministry. Send us a DM on social media or email vocations@viatorians.com to start a conversation. Young adults seeking to engage with the Viatorians and other Viatorian young adults can request to follow our private Instagram at ViatorianYA on the way to connect in. On behalf of Brother Peter and the Viatorian community, I'm Pre-Associate Dan Masterton. Venerable Louis Querbes, inspire us. St. Viator, pray for us. Adored and loved be Jesus.